seen a lot of wisdom in like the nuance and the in-between. And like, it doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to be the perfect training. It doesn't have to be, you know, whatever you look on Strava or you look on YouTube. Do what works for you and, you know, do it as well as you can.
Kill Complacency, a podcast that inspires growth and intentionality and helps you overcome your greatest obstacles.
Today's guest is my buddy. I call him my buddy, Travis Macy. I read his book. I was recently running 100Ks, my first 100K, and I wanted a good book. And so I scrolled through Audible and I thought I need a running book, and I found The Ultra Mindset. And Travis, I have to tell you, I didn't get that far in because there was runners out there and whatnot. But I've been through it twice. Love the book, and I reached out and I was like, Travis, got to get you on. So could you tell us? I mean, I could share a little bit of your story, but could you kind of tell us your story?
Oh man. Well, yeah, great to be here with you, Marty, and thanks for the invite. I'm glad you found the book, The Ultra Mindset. You know, thinking back, it's funny, like when you write a book, it's a snapshot in time, in some ways of the author and where that person's at. And, you know, looking back, like when I was writing that, like, you know, getting close to 15 years ago now, like in some ways it kind of, you know, it feels like a while ago, like, and, you know, there's things I'm sure that would be different now than, not that I got anything wrong, but, yeah, it's just, you know, when I flip through it, or like my son is 13 now, and it was written, you know, like when he was a real little kid, and he's like, Dad, I want to read The Ultra Mindset. And like, I gave him one, you know, I was kind of thinking like, man, this is, you know, just sort of a different me, you know, it was a different you, Marty. Like you told me, like you've just found running in the last, whatever, few years here, you know, imagine like 15 years ago, like just life was different. So yeah, that's kind of the thought that comes up. Like we wrote another one more recently, called A Mile at a Time. And that one's kind of less mindset, less prescriptive, sort of more of a memoir, you know, but a little, I feel like reflects the current me, you know, a little bit more. And I told you before we hit record, but I'll say it publicly, like, just, man, I'm so glad that you found running. And I'm so glad that, like, when we can find something later in life that we're really excited about, that kind of, you know, lights the fire, maybe reignites the fire, that we can throw our energy and enthusiasm into it. It feels great. And it feels great to have the newness, to have the novelty, to kind of have that beginner's mindset. It's fun to learn. It's fun to progress. You know, it's fun to to see. When I think about me for running, you know, I'm like, man, I love running, and I've almost refound like a joy for it. But I also know, like, no matter what I do, like my fastest running days are past, and that's, you know, that's fine. It is what it is. But I also, like, I keep trying to find new stuff too, man, you know, that I can get better at, like whether like, you know, I've been toying around with writing a little bit of fiction, you know, and I'm like, I know I like, you know, that's something like, you know, believe me, there's a lot of room for improvement. Or even, athletically, swimming, like the last couple months, I've kind of been, you know, I swam some in college with the triathlon team, and you know, got into some tries here and there, but I've like hardly swam in the last, you know, 10, 12 years, and getting back in the pool, you know, it's fun to like to feel some potential, because like I know, especially in swimming, it's such a technique sport that like, even as we age, particularly for me as like someone who, you know, isn't an incredible swimmer, like there's so much room for improvement, just technique wise, by putting in the time, getting the feedback, maybe getting some coaching, whatever. So anyway, that I've been talking for like 3 minutes. I haven't really told anything about my story, but yeah, I mean,
kind of on,
you know,
kind of on the note that you just said though, Travis, the compound effect, right? You could get in a pool and you could improve. I feel like, because I started running later in life, I don't know like I can have my best time still. You
Oh,
know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
exactly. Yeah, no, that's
Y
exactly my point. Yeah, especially, and that's fun.
Yeah.
Like that's
Mhm.
exciting, and especially running wise. Running is great, and it does so many of these good things. But it also, like, as we do it over a long, like, there's a cost of running a lot,
Mhm.
and it's like injuries and those kind of things, and like, for an adult who's starting running when you don't have all those miles on the chassis, like,
Yeah.
that's like really, really cool, like this freshness, you don't have like, oh shit, here's this thing I did 20 years ago and it flares up
Yeah.
every once in a while. Maybe, who knows, maybe you have that from other sports or from, I think, are you in like real estate investing? Who knows? Maybe
I'm
that's
in. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
maybe that's at a cost on, other parts of your body or whatever. But yeah, I mean, anyway, a cliff notes, just real briefly. I've lived in Colorado my whole life. I grew up in Evergreen, Colorado, kind of smallish town. West of Denver in the foothills of the Rockies. I've always been into running and endurance sports, and it started
Mhm.
when I was a little kid. I was 1987. I was 4 years old. My dad did the Ironman, and I didn't go or anything, but I had this feeling, the Ironman, and like my dad did it, and I was, those all those years, like, man, of course I watch, Michael Jordan, like,
Yeah.
but also in my mind, there were these endurance athletes. I mean, there's like Mark Allen, Dave Scott, Scott Tenley, Greg LeMond, in later on, Lance Armstrong. Like, for me, those names, they were, played just as much of a role,
Mm.
as Air Jordan. And so anyway, that stuff was out there. Like, the next year, I was 5 years old. My dad did the Leadville 100 run for the first time, and that let that left a mark on my brain, man. Marty, 5 years old, like being in the old gym in Sixth Street in
Mhm.
Leadville, like you got Ken Kluber, and and it's like, if people know Kluber now, like it's the same thing. But he was,
Mhm.
he was like he's at that time he was like the age I am now. He's probably
Yeah.
40 something. By the way, his son Cole wrote this great new book about the history of Leadville, and Ken, great book. But anyway, I'm 5 years old and I'm in this gym, and Ken Kluber, like, he's standing up there and he's like, grit, guts, determination. You're better than you think you are. You can do more than you think you can. And, like, in some ways, I was just a 5-year-old kid, like, running around and,
Mhm.
whatever, playing with the other kids. But in other words, like, man, that stuff, like, it like sunk. It made a mark. It created just an excitement and enthusiasm, and it created, in some ways, just a perspective of, like, adults going out and doing something uncertain. It seemed normal, and
Mhm.
so anyway, my dad kept doing those. He kept doing the eco challenge, started in the mid '90s, and saw those on TV, and I had a peripheral interest to it. Like, in the meantime, like, I was a kid, I was playing team sports. Like, soccer was my first love. I loved basketball. I played some
Mm.
baseball, and then high school, kept playing the other sports, but running kind of, I was a lot better at running than I was at the other sports, and ended up running a couple years at CU Boulder. I was a walk on, basically trying to survive amidst all these guys who are Olympians and All Americans and stuff. And then did triathlon junior year at CU, and then kind of my senior year sort of shift focus to adventure racing, which
Mhm.
became my main sport for, I don't know, the next 10 years or so. And I was able to be a pro adventure racer, whatever that means. You make a bit of money, like, you have travel and entry fees paid to go all over the world, and I got to, race all over the world, doing really cool races, seeing cool uh places. Really, really enjoyed that. And from there, ultra running, mountain biking, pack burro racing, got into
Mm.
that a little bit. That's a weird thing you do here in Colorado, run along with the donkey as your teammate.
Mhm.
And yeah, kind of, that's the story in a nutshell. I was a high school teacher for 7 years alongside that, and then the last I don't know, probably, I guess, almost 12 years now, I've been self-employed, mostly as a coach for adult endurance athletes, runners, mountain bikers, multi-sport athletes. ski mountaineering, adventure racing, etc. I do a little bit of life coaching kind of stuff. Do some speaking.
Mm,
I host a podcast, and I really like as a high school English teacher, I love learning. I love reading. I
mm.
love writing, and so I've enjoyed writing the books, reading the books, etc. So that's yeah, there's kind of that.
There's
I'm a pro dad too. I got my kids are 11 and 13, and that's a huge part of my life, time wise and energy wise, but also kind of spiritually. That's something I put a
mm,
lot into.
there's a lot to unpack there, Travis. I am curious. Toward the end of your book, you're sitting up on a mountain contemplating life, and it's because you were asked to be, I think, the principal. Is that right?
Mm.
Um, did
Yeah,
you
kind of.
accept that?
No, good question. Yeah, so I wasn't actually offered a principal job, but yeah, that
Okay.
was as I was starting to work on that book and imagine it. I forgot that scene's in the book, so thanks for the reminder. But yeah, I was at looking back, kind of a bit of a transition or turning point career
Yeah.
wise. Like I said, I was working as a high school English teacher. Really loved it. I love teaching. I love coaching. I love helping people just blossom into their best selves in any way
Mhm.
or another. And I have so much respect for classroom teachers because, like, man, they are the boots on the ground, just
Mhm.
helping people and helping families, really. So I loved a lot of that. I was, honestly, I felt the challenge as a teacher that pay was not merit based, and then more or less
Mm.
it was fixed,
Mm.
particularly kind of post 2008 with the economic challenges and stuff. Like my teaching salary, literally, like no matter what it was set in stone for like 4 years straight, and that was hard as a young teacher. So there was that piece, and that had me thinking about being a principal. Especially, I was teaching at the high school I went to
Mhm.
in my own childhood community, which had a lot of meaning, had some challenges as well. But part of that view, like, hey, maybe I can be principal. Like, that's a great way to make an impact on a community that you really care about.
Mhm.
And like, obviously you make a lot more money. Um, and I kind of realized, like, becoming a principal, or first maybe your assistant principal, so forth. Like, it is such a constraint on your life,
Mm.
and you have less time with your own family. Like, what are you doing in the evening? Well, you got to go attend. The school needs representatives at the sports or the band or whatever. And like, these are great. I love going to like high school games, and feels a little bit different if it's mandatory. And
Yeah.
also it would, I was still racing a lot, as had a secondary income as a professional ultra runner, and it was hard to line those things up. And I also just realized, like, hey, maybe I can go this, on my own, self-employment. Like,
Mm.
let's get this book out there. Let's just start coaching. Like, get a client. I got my buddy Charles. Like, Charles is like, I want to run an ultra. I'm like, hell yeah, Charles, let's do this. I am your coach. So I became, I'm coaching Charles, and I'm learning. I'm getting the certifications and building up that side. And actually, simultaneously, my wife went self-employed
Mm.
as well, independent post-secondary counseling, working with high school kids on college apps, essays, etc. And
Mm.
I've a lot with that over the years too. But anyway, we kind of made the leap, and we said, and I think it was a good choice. Like, hey, if this doesn't work out, we can go back. Maybe not the
Mm.
exact same job, but we'll find similar stuff. We'll go back, and yeah, we haven't looked back. So
So
um,
that's
anyway,
there's so much to dig in here because we could talk a fair bit just about that leap because that was a big leap. Um,
yeah, it was scary. I mean, we had
and
two little
so
kids.
scary.
You got a house, you got a
Yeah.
mortgage, you got health care. Like, you got a job with benefits, and then you go to whatever this the marketplace, or who knows whatever it was called then. Like, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of I mean, like right now we pay whatever $1,600 a month for some,
Yeah.
like, to be honest, relatively shitty, like, high deductible insurance plan, but like that's what's available. you know. So, like, there are those things, and there's potential and there's some freedom, there's creativity, yeah, like it's not all perfect by any means, but
Yeah.
I think we made it work.
Hmm. Talk to me, Travis. I want to hear about you as a teacher, but also doing all these races. How did you train and balance family life? Because you're fairly new married, you've got kids.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Or is it
Well,
just the 4:30 rule?
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, from the book, there's this, yeah, one of the chapters, the 4:30 a.m. rule. It's like the concept, I still believe in the concept is like you set a plan, I'm going to get
Hmm.
up at this time, or I'm going to go out right now. It's like snowing outside, but whatever. I'm going to go run. Like, okay, well, it's snowing. Who cares? Like, I'm going to go run in the snow. I believe in that. And I will say, Marty, I think since I wrote that book, like we've learned a lot about the importance of sleep
Mm,
and how day by day, like sleep is so important. And I do less waking up early than I used to.
mm,
Not to say I never do it, but anyway, that's the one caveat that I had now about the so-called 4:30 a.m. rule. But back to your question, I mean, balancing, elite athletics as a, sponsored, quote, professional adventure racer and or ultra runner with teaching. Looking back, I'd say my answer is like before having kids, it was fine. Like there was enough
mm,
time because I could, I like to get to school early. I do my lesson planning, prep, whatever, teach some usually at lunch, or maybe especially if don't tell the APs this now, but like if you had a planning period by lunch, like boom, there's an hour and a half or 2 hours, like go out for a run or go, at one high school I was at, it was right next door to the high school. So like, go up, hit
mm,
the pool, get on the treadmill, who knows, even go for a bike ride. And then typically pretty much every day training after school as well. And that worked again before kids when it was
mhm,
just my wife and I were both working full time. I'd get home at whatever 6 or 7 or 8, and like it was fine for both of us.
yeah,
And kids come along, like that was a tipping point. That was a turning point. And I kind of realized quickly after that, like something's got to change here. So my
mm,
final couple years of teaching, I became an online teacher called the Jeffco Virtual Academy. This is pre-COVID. The distance learning was a thing,
okay,
and there
yeah,
were systems in schools that did it well. It wasn't a great fit for every student. And then COVID comes around. I'm like, man, all these, like, my daughter was in kindergarten, and it's like they're just trying to do normal kindergarten
mhm,
on a computer screen. Like, don't do that. Like, why don't we learn from the schools and the experts who've been doing online ed for
mhm,
a decade? Anyway, that's kind of an aside. But my final couple of years, with little kids at home, the back and forth, the daycare, like the juggling act, and with training, that I was able to make that work for a couple years because there was more flexibility,
mhm,
uh, you know, with the online learning format. Yeah, and then after that, again, that shift to self-employment, like, we've made it work. It definitely, nothing's perfect. Like we had a lot of years where before COVID normalized video communication like we're doing right now, prior to that, my wife met with most of her clients in person, and that was on weekends.
mhm,
These high school kids and their families, she'd have a full day of meetings pretty much every Saturday and Sunday, which was great and an important job and good income and whatever. And okay, I'm dad mode Saturdays and Sundays. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a juggling act. It's a lot of my coaching clients who are in that phase of life. I feel like I understand, and I also like you know I got a lot of mantras. Perfect is the enemy of good, and
mm,
and any training is better than no training. Those little kind of things, giving ourselves compassion and empathy, figuring it out, but also I think this comes across in the Ultra Mindset book, but I maintain, I think for parents, it's important for us to hang on to something that is our own thing. That in
mm,
that could be running, that could be Kill the Complacency podcast. It could be like whatever, but find that thing and pursue it to some extent, but maybe pursue it with some flexibility as well. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be 300% all the time.
Over the years, I have been coached by countless mentors, and now I want to offer that to you as well. How? By Marty Hofmann's Life Coaching. This will be a 6-week program in which I will guarantee you will develop a more growth mindset. We will set goals and learn about the importance of the processes and habits behind those goals. I will also help you see your story differently as things happening for you, not to you. We will also be discussing your future self and give you clarity on who that is and what it looks like. For more information, please follow the link below or hop on martyhoffman.com and follow the coaching link. My context is I've only been running a couple of years, but I have 6 kids, and my kids range in age from 8 to 21. And it has been a concern that I would make it an idol and I would spend too much time running. And then my kids would get bitter. And so when I'm asking this, like obviously for guests listening, hopefully there's some nuggets, but personally, I'm kind of asking for myself. And when I started, Travis, I started just by running a marathon. I was out of shape. I just had to do something. I signed up for a marathon because I knew it'd hold me accountable. And it takes, a fair bit of, not that much training. I mean, it does, but it becomes not that much. It's 4 or 5 hours a week. But this summer I upped it to the 100K, and obviously your longer runs are longer and are back to back. And so kind of what I did, and I know about sleep, but I would just get up extra early because I wanted to be done at 8:00. And I wanted to be available to the kids. So that was sort of what I did. But maybe speak to me. What advice would you give to me if I want to continue this journey on self-improvement and long distance and find out what I can do? How do I balance? How do I balance it? Or do I just give it
Marty,
up?
great questions and a lot of wisdom. I mean, I don't think you should give it up. For me, back to again, I think a lot of us, especially who we find this ultra endurance stuff, we find we like it. We find we like the intensity, the kind of touching the void. It does something for us. I know for me, as again, looking back, like I'm kind of wired for that 300%, that sort of all or nothing, that kind of like you said, like, man, either I am doing this like full on, the full training, the full race, like, all that, or just like, fuck it, I'm doing nothing. And at least for me, maybe in the last, 5-10 years, like I've seen a lot of wisdom in like the nuance and the in between. And like, it doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to be the perfect training. It doesn't have to be, whatever you look on Strava or you look on YouTube, or it's like, oh man, like, oh, look at this another awesome film about Anton, like crushing it. And oh man, he did every Saturday he does 30 and every Sunday he does 20. And like, okay, maybe that works for like, him or whatever, someone else on YouTube or Instagram, but like, does that mean that works for you, Marty? Like, not necessarily, probably not, in fact. And does it work for your family and your career and like everything else you got going on? Like, probably not. So do what works for you and, do it as well as you can. But also, like, even, in an ultra run, like, I think it's more important performance wise to get there like excited and physically and also mentally like refreshed and energetic. Like, it's more important to get there in that state than to get there like optimally fit, and often if you're going this optimal fitness, especially in running, like it's walking a line. Like elite runners, man, they're walking a line at all times, pretty much, with psychological burnout and with injury, with overtraining, with like all this stuff. I don't think most people should walk that line. And so I think it's embracing that in between and figuring out, again, like you said, back to back long runs. Okay, well, maybe And I mean, the way I coach Marty, it's like many roads lead to Rome, and many of
Mm,
my clients, are like the best off day every week is Sunday or Saturday or whatever, some like a full chunk of time. And a lot of my like running career, it was a good fit for me and my wife and our kids at that time. Like, Dad doesn't train on Sundays or
mm,
Saturdays, whatever the one. That was a good expectation for all of us. So like if that's what it is, or maybe it's both. I have many clients that are like they do not train on weekends. Like they only train during the
mm,
week. And you figure out like, okay, maybe there aren't back-to-back long runs. There's one long run per week. Maybe you don't have a chunk of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours to do a single run, but maybe in a given day you could do 2 hours here and then 2 there, or something. Like you approach it creatively in an individualized way, and you get as ready as you can. And I also
mhm.
think that's another, like, people are like, oh, I've done a marathon, oh, maybe I want to do 100 or whatever, and they're like, oh god, I got to train 4 times as much. And in my answer,
No.
no. Like, uh,
Yeah.
probably you can't train 4 times as much because you don't have enough time, and if you do it, like, you're probably going to get hurt. So
Mhm.
you don't, and that's okay. So yeah, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Creativity.
yeah,
No.
technically, I think that's really good advice. Like, just be more gracious with yourself, right? We don't have to
Yeah.
compare to the elite and do what the elite do. We all have our own bodies and our own.
Yeah.
Because that's the other
Yeah.
thing you didn't necessarily talk about, but I may not be able to put in the miles that somebody else can per week because
Exactly.
my body
Yeah.
will break down. And so
Yeah.
I have.
Those, when you see the people, again, whatever, Strava, Instagram, YouTube, like, these things can be great inspirers, and like, comparison is the thief of joy, and in running,
Mhm,
comparison is the generator of injury. Because you see those people, if someone's putting in whatever, I don't care, 80, 100, 120 miles a week, like, these are people who've been running for years and years and
mm,
years, and they've gotten into that graduate, and they probably have, exceptionally good genetics in many ways that allow that to happen. Like, that's not going to be a good fit for most people. Also, Marty, I love the word you used, idol, like, as in a false
mm,
idol, because I know for me, um, very much at times in an overextended achievement orientation, the podium, the sponsorship, the prize money, like,
mm,
those became false idols for sure. And in my own experience, it was only by, like, actually achieving those, hitting those, that I
mhm.
was able to realize, like, okay, that's cool, but like nothing really changed. Like, you're still the same person. And that's that. And I think, again, probably most athletes, it's not like, oh, I got to win this thing. But I do think, especially in the ultra running world, there can be that sense. And for many people, it's like the 100-mile run, like 100 miles. Like, I am not a real runner, or I'm not a real ultra runner till I run 100 miles, right? When I finish a 100-mile, like, something's going to change. Like, I'm going to feel better about myself. I'm going to, insert your conclusion there. And like, Marty, I got to tell you, like, that's a bunch of bullshit. Like,
Mhm,
if you want to run 100 miles, if you're excited about that process, if you're excited about the race, if you're excited about, like, the spiritual, psychological, physical journey of doing it, like, yes, do it. And
mhm.
maybe, and I talk about this in the ultra mindset, like, okay, get that buckle, get the finisher, the Leadville sweatshirt with your name and time on it. Like, yeah, like, that's a cool, like, that's a nice little cherry on the top. It's kind of cool, but it's, dude, that's not going to change your life. It's not going to change you.
Yeah.
It's not going to make, again, I'm saying this because I see this come up a lot with adult athletes. It doesn't make you enough or make you a real runner or whatever. Like, that stuff's secondary. Like, if you go out
Mhm,
and you run and you do it consistently and you enjoy it, and like, you find the connection and all that, like, that's what makes you a runner. Like,
mhm.
you can toe the line or not toe the line or whatever, but like, that's what being a runner is, if you ask me.
If you want to wear a billboard of a message of kill complacency or live intentionally, then check out my merch store. It's www.mindsetshop.com. Mindset is with an X, so it's MINDXET, shop, SHOP.com, mindsetshop.com. That's good. And I agree with you 100% because especially when it becomes an idol, like that's our aspiration. And then that event is a letdown. And
Yeah,
and emotionally, right, we tank because we were way up here and phew, and it's a letdown. And I would also argue, Travis, I think you see it a lot at the marathon level. People
totally. Oh yeah,
people train for this marathon and then they're
yeah,
done. It's
yeah,
like it's like losing weight for the high school graduate or high school reunion, right?
yeah,
As
yeah,
soon as the
exactly.
event happens,
Yeah,
nothing matters again. And
yeah,
and it's to your point, it hasn't become a process. It hasn't become an identity
yeah.
um, where they enjoy it and it's who they are and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, Marty. I mean, it is, luckily this is, it's becoming part of the conversation now in endurance athletics, maybe just sports in general. Like, yeah,
mhm,
that post-race blues, and in some cases, maybe it is just a little blues, like whatever. I mean, sometimes like it is full on like downright depression,
mhm.
especially the races get longer, a marathon, an ultra run. Man, 100 miler, like, you go out and do 100 miles and you're up all night and like you're totally smashed, like you're screwed, like physically and psychologically. And because of that, because of the hormone dysregulation, the sleep, and as you said, more importantly, you had this goal, you had this mission, like
Mhm.
boom, you're focused. And like, whatever the outcome is, maybe you nail it and it's like, oh yeah, that was awesome. And then you're like, I gotta get that again, like when's it? Oh, 2 weeks, there's another 100, like let's do it. Or it's like people are like, oh, I had a bad race, like, oh, all is lost. And then a day later, they're like, revenge, like, let's oh, there's another race in 2 weeks, like, go do it, bam. Those usually that doesn't work out very well. And I think, I try to help, especially newer running clients. We have a bit of those conversations ahead of time,
Mm,
but we also, like, after the race, trying to be there to guide and support this process. And that may involve,
mhm.
helping them find a therapist, helping them find other outlets, helping them hopefully even before the race, like, yes, here's this great thing, it's important, it's a guiding light, but let's not over index on it. Let's make sure we maintain these other aspects of our identity so that whatever happens with the race, like, it's not the end of the world either way. Um, and yeah, Marty, I'm sitting here saying all this like it's easier said than done. Believe me.
Well, I'm curious. Travis, you were pretty decorated. Like you won a lot of stuff. Is that let down harder if you win because your expectations were met? Or is it harder if maybe a DNF and you're done and you have something to blame it on?
Yeah,
The emotional
I don't,
aspect of it, I guess.
yeah, that's a good question, Marty. I kind of, back to that comparison, I try to stay away from like what's easier, what's harder, how does my, whatever post race low compare to this one or that one. There's a great film, I think it's called The Weight of Gold, where Michael Phelps and some other, maybe you've seen this, I think it's Netflix or Amazon, Olympians discussing this same thing. You get to the Olympics, or very often
Mhm.
win a gold medal or many gold medals, and then like, holy shit. And I mean, I do think, in some ways, because to be at that level in any sport, you really have to devote your life to it in many ways.
Mhm.
That can make it harder to have other aspects of the identity. But I mean, that said, like, who's to say, like, whoever wins, whatever. David Roche sets a record this year in the Leadville 100.
Mhm.
I mean, cheers to David, like, awesome guy. And I think a grounded, I would venture to say, like, had he finished 10th or 100th or not finished, he would have still been he would have been the same guy. He happened to
Mhm.
win, and now like the spotlight's on him. But I think he's in a good place, to navigate that. But
Mhm.
just what he did, does that matter more than whatever the person who really wanted to make the cutoff and finished in 29 hours
Sure.
55 minutes, or the person who really wanted to make it and like they crossed the line, but it was 30 hours in 2 minutes. So like they're not an
Mm.
official finisher. And like, that goes back to the philosophical question, like, oh, you're 2 minutes faster. Like, does that really matter? I mean, well,
Yeah.
I don't think it does, but yeah. Anyway, great questions.
Just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values, and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives, to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there.